Guys, this is a very urgent video. Class action lawsuit against NIO. Is there meat to this bone? Let me explain this lawsuit. What happened back in the day when this happened? Yes, I got a haircut. My wife kept on saying, "Mr. P, you look like the hobo. Go get a haircut." And after the haircut, she said, "Now you look like the ass." So what's going on? U.S. judge greenlights NIO investor class action over factory claim. NIO did the initial public offering back in 2018. The purpose of that IPO was to raise money for building their own factory. Now, of course, eventually they did not build their own factory during that period of time. They canceled it. So the lawsuit in federal court seeks damages from NIO, its executives, and underwriters for declining share price after the car maker said in March 2019 they had scrapped plans to build the new factory. It said was under construction during the IPO. Now, this was a very sensitive time, and it was a very smart move for NIO to essentially not build a factory, because back then what happened, NIO was burning a lot of money. NIO was heading towards the brink of bankruptcy. NIO also had battery fires back then. This was way back then, all right? Everything's fixed now, but it was a very treacherous period of time. That was those darkest days, and NIO had very little cash in their pockets. If they used that to build a factory, they certainly would have died, and it's very smart of them to not use that cash for the factory. But by announcing that, the share price dropped 30-some percent. The investors anticipated the factory would give NIO its own manufacturing capacity and alleviate its reliance on a Chinese state-owned manufacturer, some analysts viewed as third tier. A lot of people do view JAC as third tier. They're known for making trucks. A lot of people, initially, people were very doubtful that, a company that makes trucks can make a luxurious EV. But I think it was absolutely smart that they did this. And my car, my NIO EC6, wouldn't have its extremely good quality if it wasn't for the expertise of JAC. A very important reason why they didn't build a factory. So nowadays, it's pretty much impossible to get a vehicle manufacturing license. You have to buy it off of another company. And these manufacturing licenses were given out back in the 1900s, late 1900s, to a lot of these Chinese companies. So NIO could have done what Li Auto and XPeng did, which was buy another company, basically just for the manufacturing license, and then build their own vehicles. Or what NIO did, of course, partner up with JAC, which I think is the smartest thing to do, save them costs, and also they were able to leverage JAC's expertise in car manufacturing and their experience, and allow NIO to build really high quality cars. And that's why NIO's first gen vehicles were really successful. But construction had never started, the lawsuit alleges, citing former employees and the lack of necessary construction permits. Oh yeah, that's the permit that we talked about. The investor also claimed Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and several other underwriters failed to properly vet the company's statements. When NIO disclosed the plant would not be built in March 2019, its ADS price dropped 30% from around $10 to $7 per share. So back then, and this was way before I even bought my NIO. I bought my NIO in late 2020, but I've been following NIO since early 2018. And what happened back then? I was reading a lot of Yahoo Finance posts and messages, and if you dig far enough, you'll find that there was this one person. He went all in on NIO at around $8, and all in. But he was also on margin, and then when the stock dropped to $6, he was margin called, and he had to either choose to sell his home and then put more money into NIO stock, or give up the position. He sold his home and also just basically went completely all in on NIO. And of course, what ended up happening, the stock went to 3. He was just absolutely panicking. The stock went to 1.7, and that was when we didn't hear anything from him anymore. He probably got margin called out. But after that, in 2020, you can see what happened with the stock. Went upwards all the way to $60 in early 2021. Absolutely crazy. So these investors, these early investors in 2018, 2019, they lost a ton of money, but they would have earned tens of millions of dollars. And that guy probably, if he wasn't on margin and he wasn't margin called out, he was still in the stock, he probably would have at least 6 or 7x his money and turned into multi-millionaire, 10 or 20 million dollars. So this is pretty insane to think about. And obviously these guys are very, very pissed with the stock. The ruling is one of the final hurdles for the investors before a trial in the case. Securities class action rarely go to trial. Those that are not dismissed typically result in settlements. The company may also ask the judge to rule in its favor without a trial. Obviously, there's a lot of this anti-China, China versus West kind of sentiment. And NIO CEO has stated in the past that he actually regrets going public in the U.S., considering the fact that right now there's so much of this China versus U.S. kind of mentality going on. And obviously any ruling by an American judge, U.S. judge, would obviously be in the favor of the U.S. and very anti-China. So does this constitute misleading investors? Well, if you think about it this way, they eventually did build factory number 2, which is at NIO Park, and they do eventually have their own factory, and they're also building factory number 3, factory number 4 for the sub-brands. So they did eventually build their own factory, but not at that time period, right? I believe investors certainly would have seen a much larger loss if NIO went ahead with the factory plans and the stock just absolutely went bankrupt with nothing. That would be a big blow for everybody. I gotta stand behind NIO on this one. It was a very smart move for them to do the joint op with JAC. However, these investors that feel like they've got misled by NIO because they said they were going to build a factory, use the money for a factory, but did not. Look, plans always change from time to time. And I do not think this really constitutes misleading investors, because they did eventually get that joint op factory up and running. And also, these guys are just butthurt that they lost money on NIO stock when they could have earned a lot of money. Look, you can't just go suing the company whenever decide to change your plans. Plans change all the time. I think there's very little meat on the bone for this one. By the way, look at this EC7, absolutely beautiful car. Holy smokes. And I think the judge will understand the situation that NIO was in. If you're in a tight situation, you only got $100 in your pockets, do you want to do something for $90 or cancel that spending and try to save money? Of course you would try to cancel that spending and try to save money. That's the logical thing to do. Otherwise, NIO would have pretty much gone bankrupt. I think if the judge sees this clearly, there is no lawsuit, and it should be ruled in favor of NIO. However, the fact that it's all of a sudden China versus West, and then before there was that whole Luckin Coffee scandal, misleading investors and all that kind of stuff, I think the judge might be a little bit heavy-handed just based on this whole U.S. versus China sentiment. If the judge is truly fair, I think NIO will be fine. But if the judge is just anti-China, I think we might have NIO might have to pay some money. We'll have to see. Of course, I'm not saying that NIO will have to pay money. Maybe, maybe not. All right. What do you guys think about this? I think it's very stupid to sue the company every time it goes down. What about the times that they didn't meet guidance, and then you sue the company because they didn't meet the guidance and the stock went down? Come on, man. Then you can come up with thousands of different lawsuits, and there's no need for the company to even operate. But I want to know what you guys think about this whole deal, whole situation. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.